Hi everyone! In today's video I want to talk about how you can keep your garden weed-free naturally by just following a few easy steps, and at the end of the video I will try to give you some motivation for weeding as well. So let's start first with step number one. Probably the most important step actually is to start early in the growing season. So this of course depends where in the world you are. We are here in a zone 6 and our growing season starts typically in about April time. So rain is starting, the garden is coming back to life, deciduous trees and plants are starting to get their leaves, and also the weeds are starting to grow very, very quickly. So it's important here to not just let them grow, it's important to get them out right away. Why is that? If you wait too long with the first round of weeding, then the weeds will produce seeds and seed themselves out, and then you have just more and more and more weeds, and then it's difficult to get them back under control. Step number 2 is to wait for some rain. Why is that? It is a lot easier to get weeds out when the soil is wet or moist, as opposed to trying to weed when the soil is really dry. Also here, this depends on the soil type you have. If you have a sandy type of soil, it may not matter so much to wait for rain, but if you have a loam type of soil, which we have here in our garden, or even a clay type of soil, then it's very difficult to get the weeds out when it's dry because the soil gets very compact and very hard. Before I will demonstrate step 3, I will show you which tools you can use for weeding. This is an option. This tool is probably a typical weeding tool. It is quite long. This is probably about 20 centimeters, this part here, or 8 inches. And with this one you can take out larger weeds, like for example dandelions that root a lot deeper than other weeds. Then another tool and an option is to use a tool like this one here. So with this one you can just go along on the surface. Note though that this is probably not going to be taking out all the roots of the weeds. And tool number 3, which is my personal favorite, I just put those to the side, is a tool like this one here. So this has a little fork type of bit at the end, and then here you have this round bit which just brings you a support whilst weeding, whilst lifting the weeds out, and I'll show you that. This is my personal favorite. For larger dandelions, for example, it doesn't work that well, so I'll be using the other one for that. But for any normal size or smaller size weeds, this is a brilliant tool to get them out completely. Now, let me demonstrate. Here you can see in our grassy section here that we have dandelions. And dandelions, where we live, they seed quite quickly, so they come up, they bloom, and then just a few days later they throw their seeds. So I always try to get them out as soon as possible. And with this tool it is really, really good. And this brings me to step 3, which is to get the weeds out by the root. If you, for example, just take the dandelion leaves and break them off, that's great, you can't see it, but it doesn't really come out all the way. You see, you break off the root and most likely this dandelion is going to regrow. So the important step is to lift them out, and with this tool I just put that in and then I lift it out, and you see you get the dandelion out pretty much by the root. I've now moved across the pathway, and you basically put this fork kind of end or lever around the root, and then you just lift it out. And Adam knows the term for this bit here. It was a
fulcrum.
Yes, fulcrum. Good. Then moving on to those, and maybe we can film a close-up here. So that you can see that properly. So I always try with one hand to grab these leaves from the dandelion. Then I go in with that tool, you see, around the root, and then I lift it out slowly so I don't break the root or don't break it too much. Okay, you see there's a little bit stayed in there. This happens sometimes. Let's do it with this one. So probably I'll have to come back to this in a few weeks. Here we go. And that, you see, that's very nice. You see how much of the root I actually lifted out. And note that with this kind of tool, you see the damage, so to say, I do here on the soil is very little. So it's just a little bit of soil that is lifted out, and I just push that back in. Here for these grassy sections, it doesn't really matter so much, but weeding in moss, this is very important not to lift up too much moss. Next, oh, here's another small one. So I'll show this again. So you put this fork bit around the root, put it in, and then by using this,
fulcrum.
You just, yes, thank you. You just lift it up. Sometimes you have to do it twice. There we go. And here it is. Wonderful. And now I will show you in comparison this larger tool. As you see, this dandelion is probably too large for the tool I just used. So let's change to this one. And with this one, obviously, I'm making like a bigger hole, so to say. And you see when I start lifting how much soil that actually moves. But it works equally as well. You see, all the roots are out. Goodbye, dandelions. And then I just put that back in, and there's another one here. So if this dandelion was growing in our mossy sections, then I'd probably still use the small tool and try to get them out, because this would disrupt too much of the moss. But here this is just some grassy section, so it's okay. Let's see where this root is coming from, that end. Okay, there's another one still in there. Here we go. Okay. Good, and this is how you should remove all the weeds. So always get the root out as well. It doesn't matter if it's a dandelion or you see something like this. This one, you see they come out, and it's important to catch the roots. Otherwise, as I mentioned also before, if you just break off the leaves like that, you may not be able to see it for a while, but it will grow back in no time. And this brings me to my last step, which is to keep going with weeding. So don't weed early in the season and then let it be for the next few weeks or months even, because then new weeds will grow. There may be still seeds in the soil from last year, for example, and then they will just start seeding themselves out, and you'll have the same amount of weeds everywhere again. So that's also key to, other than starting early, to keep going with it. And it actually, if you do it regularly, it actually makes it quite easy, because you do not use up that much time for it, because normally there will just be a few weeds growing here and there. So if you do it, for example, on a weekly basis, just check the areas you're weeding. If you see a few more weeds, take them out, and so it stays nice and pretty much all the time. So I've moved on to the other side of the garden, and I will continue with some dandelions here. And whilst I do that, I would like to try to give you some motivation for weeding. So weeding is as such kind of a boring task, really. It requires some time and it requires patience, and it's sometimes frustrating, especially during the growing season when this starts again and when weeds are just popping up everywhere. Now, what can you do to make it more fun and make it more enjoyable? For example, you could listen to some music whilst weeding. You could listen to an audiobook. You could invite a friend or family member to help you weed and maybe catch up with them whilst doing that. Or alternatively, and this is what I like to do, I just like to listen to the sounds of nature. So we have so many birds in the garden here. I like to listen to that. There's the occasional bird of prey flying over. Sometimes ducks are flying past. There may be a little bit of wind, a light breeze. So I just enjoy that, just being outside, enjoying nature, enjoying the peacefulness that nature can provide, and just relaxing outside and letting my thoughts roll as I weed along. So this is how I try to find joy in it. And also don't forget, at the end, when you're done weeding, you always get rewarded in that you can look back onto an area that is completely weed free. And this brings me to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I see you next time. Bye.